Let's take a look at this easy interpreting data question. Now, we're given some information here. Now, remember, in your interpreting data questions, there could be graphs, there could be tables, or there could be a text that has lots of information within it. A growing number of consumers have turned to plant-based meat alternatives in recent years, often under the belief that these products are significantly healthier than traditional meat. Older surveys suggested that up to 65% of people switching to plant-based meat reported noticeable health improvements. However, a recent international study of over 1.8 million participants found that fewer than 12% actually experienced measurable health benefits. Dr. Renata Ellis of the Global Nutrition Research Council states that most perceived improvements were likely due to the health halo effect, a cognitive bias where people believe a product is healthy simply because it appears to be or is labelled as such. She emphasised that while plant-based meat can be beneficial in some ways, not all versions are nutritionally superior to regular meat. Remember, when you read these questions, it's important that we don't bring in our own knowledge. So let's imagine we know lots about this already, and we already have our own opinions as to whether or not plant-based meat alternatives are healthier or not. It's important that when we are evaluating the conclusions, that we evaluate them purely based on the information that has been given to us. So with that in mind, first conclusion, nearly 2/3 of plant-based meat consumers gain measurable health benefits. This conclusion does not follow. The reason for that is even though more than 2/3 of people say that they have reported noticeable health improvements, these are self-reported. These are not measurable health benefits. Number two, the halo effect can lead people to assume food is healthier than it actually is. Yes, the passage directly tells us this. Some plant-based meat options may not be better for health than traditional meat. We are also told this as well. In the last sentence of the passage, we are told that not all versions are nutritionally superior. Number four, Dr. Ellis believes the health halo effect may explain why some people feel better after switching. Again, this conclusion does hold true and is told to us in the passage. And then the last one, the study proves that plant-based meat is harmful to health. This is one where we have quite definitive language here, saying it proves or it states. The study does not suggest that. The study is investigating as to whether, or says that fewer than 12% actually experience the measurable health benefits. It's also not saying the opposite. Just because it says that 12% experienced health benefits is not saying that 88% had negative health effects either. So this conclusion does not follow. Let's take a look at this medium level difficulty interpreting data question. Now, the interpreting data questions, you could get a graph, a table, or some text. In this question, we've been given a table. The table shows data collected from a city transportation department tracking the rise in e-scooter usage across urban zones. The city is observing how weather conditions and competing transportation options like bikes, ride shares, and walking influence e-scooter popularity. And we can see we have our table there. Now, in these questions, it's important that we try and save as much time as possible. So initially, I'm not going to try and read through everything in the table to understand what is in the table. I'm going to read the headings so that I can get a sense of where the relevant information is. So we can see we have the month along the left-hand side, and across the top, the number of e-scooter trips, the proportion of zones with bike sharing surges, the proportion of zones with a drop in ride sharing services. Notice the language here, it's different. So the third column there is the inverse. Proportion of zones with high foot traffic, and then the average daily rainfall. And then I'm going to look at my conclusions. E-scooter trips tend to increase as rainfall decreases. So I can see that the e-scooter trips are increasing as time through the months, and average rainfall is decreasing through the months. So this conclusion does follow. Number two, bike sharing and e-scooter usage peak during the same month. I can see that e-scooter trips are at their maximum in May, and the proportion of zones with bike sharing surges are also in May. So yes, this conclusion does follow. Number three, ride share services become more popular during spring than in winter. So let's look at our ride sharing services. We can see that during spring, we have a maximum there, or kind of April to May, we have a maximum. And this is the inverse. So this is a drop in rideshare services. So this would mean 0.8, the frequency of 0.8, that's how much they have decreased by. Now, we can see that in the winter, we have a much lower proportion of the drop in rideshare services, so a much larger proportion in the number of people taking their rideshare services. So this conclusion does not follow. The reason that this one is difficult is it's about spotting just that single word in the table, which tells us what the table is representing. Number 4. Areas with high foot traffic may also see an increase in e-scooter use. So we can see with high foot traffic, as the foot traffic increases, we can see that the e-scooter trips are increasing as well. This conclusion does follow. We're not actually told information about which zones are seeing high foot traffic, but we can see that there is an overall proportion, 0.9. So 90% of those zones are seeing an increase in foot traffic. And so we also have a massive increase in the number of e-scooter trips. It's unlikely that those e-scooter trips are centered within one zone of the city, the zone that doesn't see an increase in high foot traffic. And we also see that in the question, we have this kind of subjective language, may also see an increase in e-scooter use. If this was phrased differently as areas with high foot traffic definitely see an increase in e-scooter use, then that conclusion does not follow because we're not told enough information. And the last one, walking competes more directly with bike sharing than with e-scooters. This we don't know. We don't know this information. We don't have enough information to be able to draw that conclusion. We can see that the high foot traffic is increasing alongside the bike sharing through into the spring months, but we don't know if they are competing with e-scooter trips. Let's take a look at this hard interpreting data question. Your data could be given to you in one of 3 ways. It could be represented as information in a passage of text, it could be data within a graph, or data in a table. In this instance, we have 2 different graphs. The graph below display the pricing trends for single and deluxe cabins at a mountain retreat over the course of a year, alongside the typical daily expenditure for guests staying in these accommodations. Place yes if the conclusion does follow, place no if the conclusion does not follow. Now, before I look at the graphs I'm not going to spend time trying to look at everything in the graph. I'm going to look at the titles and the axes. So I can see that the first graph is the cabin prices, and I can see I've got 2 different lines here, single and deluxe cabin, and my data points are within each month. And then I've got my average daily amount spent per cabin, and again, single versus deluxe. So, looking at our conclusions, those in deluxe cabins spend less on their mountain retreat than those in single cabins. This conclusion, we can see the deluxe cabins, in fact, spend more per day than those in single cabins. So this conclusion does not follow. It is incorrect. Number 2. The highest nightly rate is not the same for deluxe and single cabins. We can see that the nightly cabin prices, the peak for the deluxe cabin is around 440, whereas the peak for the single cabin is around 380 odd, 370. So we can see that the deluxe cabin is higher. They are not the same. So this conclusion does follow. Number 3, in May, a greater number of guests opted for single cabins compared to deluxe cabins. Now we might look at this information and we see that in May, we can see the number for the deluxe cabin is higher. We can also see that the average spend is greater as well, but we have no information to tell us about the number of individuals that have booked the cabins. So this conclusion does not follow. Number 4, the standard daily spending in the retreat during June matches that of May. This is where it's really important that we read the graphs carefully. We look at the daily spending, we look at June, we look at May, we can see that they are different, but these are the nightly cabin prices. The daily spending is just an average. We don't have any information about the daily spending per month. So this conclusion also does not follow. And then number 5, on average, the retreat earns more money from deluxe cabins than from single cabins, where we can see that the average daily spend is greater for the deluxe cabin. We can also see that the nightly cabin prices are consistently higher for the deluxe cabin too. So yes, this conclusion does follow.